It was 10 degrees below zero in Westchester when I stepped out of the Uber, shivering in my thin coat. My grandfather, Joseph, was waiting on the porch of the estate, staring at the empty driveway where my car should have been. "Mara?" he asked, his voice cutting through the wind. "Where is the Lexus LX 600 I bought you for your promotion? Why are you in a taxi?" Before I could answer, the front door opened. My mother, Angela, stepped out, wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of red wine. She didn't look guilty. She looked bored. "Oh, stop making a scene, Dad," she smiled. Emily needed it more. "She's pregnant. Mara has a subway pass." Everyone froze. And that was the moment I decided I wasn't coming inside for dinner. I was coming inside for war. Before I tell you what I did with the kill switch in my pocket, tell me. Would you let your family steal $110,000 from you just to keep the peace? I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why. Screaming implies you are surprised. And begging implies you are helpless. I was neither. My name is Mara. I am 26 years old. And I work as a forensic auditor for a firm that hunts down hidden assets for federal investigations. I spend my days tracking people who think they are smarter than the paper trail they leave behind. I know exactly what greed looks like. And standing there in the snow, watching my mother sip her wine, I realized I wasn't looking at family. I was looking at a target. Angela thought she held all the cards because she held the physical key fob. She forgot who actually paid the bill. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My fingers were stiff from the cold, but they moved with muscle memory. I didn't need to argue. I just needed to access the admin panel. One tap on the Lexus app. Status connected. I selected the security menu and hit the kill switch. Engine immobilization engaged. Valet mode locked. Across the street, where Emily had parked my car in a neighbor's driveway to hide it, the alarm chirped once, decisively, and the headlights flashed before going dark. The car was now a 5,000-pound brick, but I wasn't done. Immobilizing the asset was just step one. Public humiliation was step two. I scrolled to the media tab. The SUV was equipped with an external PA system, a feature I'd installed for security monitoring. I selected the audio file I'd received 3 hours ago from a mutual friend who had grown tired of Emily's bragging. I turned the volume to maximum and pressed play. Suddenly, Emily's voice boomed through the quiet suburban street, amplified and distorted but unmistakable. I told her I just took the idiot's car. The recording blasted, bouncing off the frozen lawns. She's too busy working to notice. If she complains, I'll just cry about the baby and Mom will handle it. It's too easy. The silence that followed the recording was absolute. Porch lights flickered on up and down the block. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Angela's smile didn't just fade. It evaporated. She looked at the dark street, then at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Emily appeared in the window, her face pale, the key fob dangling loosely from her hand. Grandpa Joseph moved before anyone else could. He didn't shout. He didn't lecture. He marched up the steps, past my mother, and into the house. A moment later, he emerged, dragging Emily by the arm, snatching the key fob from her grip with a force that made her yelp. He walked down the driveway and pressed the keys into my palm. His hand was warm, but his eyes were ice cold as he looked at his daughter. "You fix this," he growled at Angela. "Right now." I closed my fist around the cold metal of the key. I felt the weight of the victory. It felt heavy, solid, and undeniable. I had my property back. I had exposed their lies. I had the patriarch on my side. I turned toward the street, ready to unlock my car and drive away from this toxicity forever. I thought it was over. I thought I had won. But I should have known better. Narcissists don't accept defeat. They just change the battlefield. I never even made it to the driver's side door. The victory lasted exactly 8 seconds. That is the thing about survivors of toxic families. We are trained to expect the blow, but we are also desperate to believe the war is over. I had the keys. I had my grandfather's protection. I let my shoulders drop, just an inch, and that was the mistake that nearly destroyed me. Blue lights exploded against the snow, blinding and rhythmic. 2 police cruisers drifted around the corner, silent but aggressive, blocking the driveway and trapping the Lexus, and me, in a cage of strobe lights. I froze, my hand hovering over the door handle. I looked back at the porch. Grandpa Joseph looked confused, his brows knitting together. "Grandpa, did you call them?" I asked, my voice whipped away by the wind. He didn't have time to answer. The front door flew open again, and my mother stepped out. She wasn't holding wine anymore. She was holding her face. "Help me," she screamed, her voice shrill and perfectly pitched for the neighbors who were still watching from their windows. "She's hurting me. My daughter is attacking us." Angela ran down the steps, stumbling into the snow, pointing a trembling finger at me. As she entered the halo of the police headlights, I saw it. A long, jagged scratch running down her left cheek, fresh and bleeding. It was precise. It was vicious. And it was self-inflicted. I had watched her fingernails dig into her own skin through the window moments before she opened the door, but my brain hadn't processed the calculation until now. She hadn't just been standing there. She had been prepping the crime scene. 2 officers rushed me. They didn't see a forensic auditor standing her ground against theft. They saw a hostile young woman in the dark, and a weeping, bleeding mother. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle," one officer shouted, his hand on his holster. I put my hands up, the keys dangling from my finger. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. She is lying. Get on the ground, now." They didn't wait for compliance. One officer grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back with enough force to make my shoulder pop. He slammed me forward. My cheek hit the frozen hood of the Lexus, the metal biting into my skin like ice. The cold was shocking, stealing the breath from my lungs. Angela was sobbing now. A performance worthy of an Academy Award. "She's mentally unstable, officer," she wailed, clinging to Emily for support. She broke in. She threatened the baby. "Look what she did to my face." I couldn't move. The weight of the officer was pinning me to the car. And in that crushing pressure, I felt a familiar, sickening snap in my chest. It wasn't a bone breaking. It was the chain of the survivor tightening around my throat. It is a specific kind of heartbreak that only scapegoats know. It is the moment you realize that your competence, your truth, and your evidence mean absolutely nothing against the sheer, weaponized victimhood of a narcissist. I had let myself believe that because I was right, I was safe. I had looked at Grandpa Joseph and thought, finally, someone is protecting me. But protection is an illusion when you are dealing with someone willing to mutilate themselves to win. I had underestimated her desperation. I had brought a spreadsheet to a knife fight. "You are under arrest for domestic battery." The officer growled in my ear. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final. I twisted my head to look at the porch. I needed Grandpa Joseph to step in. I needed the patriarch who had just commanded the room to command this. But he was just standing there, staring at Angela's bleeding face, his expression unreadable. The betrayal tasted like bile. Angela met my eyes over the officer's shoulder. She stopped crying for exactly 1 second. She didn't smile. She just stared, her eyes flat and victorious. She had flipped the board. I wasn't the plaintiff anymore. I was the defendant. And in the state of New York, with a visible injury involved, the police had no choice. Mandatory arrest. I was going to jail. I didn't struggle. I didn't beg. As the squad car door slammed shut, sealing me into the sterile, plastic-scented cage, I shut down the part of my brain that was a daughter and booted up the part that was a forensic auditor. Panic is a luxury I couldn't afford. Panic makes you miss details, and details were the only thing that could save me now. The officer driving was young, maybe a rookie, and he kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably expecting me to start screaming or kicking the windows. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I stared straight ahead, my wrists aching against the cold metal cuffs, my mind racing through the variables. This wasn't just about a stolen car anymore. This was an escalation. Angela had played a dangerous card. By accusing me of domestic battery, she had initiated a sequence of legal events she clearly didn't understand. She thought she was just punishing me, teaching me a lesson about who holds the power. She didn't realize she had just handed me the shovel to dig her grave. I closed my eyes and visualized the timeline. I had arrived at 7:15. The confrontation lasted maybe 8 minutes. The police arrived at 7:25. In that 10-minute window, Angela had self-inflicted a wound deep enough to bleed, coached Emily on her story, and called 911. It was efficient. It was calculated. And it was funded by fraud. That was the piece she forgot. Narcissists always focus on the immediate. Win the car, the attention, the control. They forget the ledger. I knew about the credit cards she'd opened in my name when I was in college, the ones I'd discovered during a routine background check for my first job. I knew about the loans she'd taken out using my old authorized user status to prop up Emily's failed boutique. I had traced the money. It wasn't just mismanagement. It was systematic identity theft, totaling over $250,000. She needed me arrested tonight because if I wasn't discredited, if I wasn't painted as the unstable aggressor, I was a threat. I was the one person who could expose the financial house of cards she lived in. The arrest wasn't punishment. It was a preemptive strike. The car slowed as we approached the station. I took a deep breath, letting the cold air sharpen my focus. I wasn't Mara the victim anymore. I was Mara the evidence gatherer. Every second from now on was part of the audit. The officer opened the door and pulled me out. "Watch your head," he muttered, not unkindly. I looked him in the eye. "Officer, I am compliant." But you need to know this is a false report, and I can prove it." He sighed. The tired sound of a man who had heard it all before. "Tell it to the judge, lady. Everyone's innocent on a Friday night." I didn't argue. I just walked into the station, head high, the handcuffs clicking a rhythm that sounded less like defeat and more like a countdown. Angela had started a fire to burn me. She didn't know I was fireproof. And she certainly didn't know I had brought a fire extinguisher that recorded in 4K. The booking room was fluorescent bright and smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. The officer, a heavy-set sergeant who looked like he was counting the minutes until retirement, unlocked my right cuff so I could sign the property intake form. He pointed to a plastic bin. Belt, shoelaces, jewelry, phone. "Put it all in the bin." I didn't move. I kept my hand on the collar of my coat. "Officer, before I surrender my personal effects, I need you to log a specific item into evidence, not as property, but as exculpatory material regarding the felony charge of filing a false report." He looked up, unimpressed. "I told you, lady. Tell it to the judge in the morning. Put the jewelry in the bin." "It's not jewelry," I said, my voice steady. "It's a high-definition wide-angle lens with a localized hard drive and cloud backup capabilities." I tapped the small, nondescript black circle pinned to my lapel. It looked like a button. It was actually a witness. "I am a court-certified process server," I continued, leaning slightly over the counter so he could see the tiny red indicator light that was still blinking. "I came here straight from serving a subpoena in a hostile fraud case. Standard protocol dictates I record all interactions for safety. Under New York Penal Law Section 250.00, New York is a one-party consent state. I am a party to the conversation. I consented to the recording. That makes every second of video and audio I captured tonight admissible, legal, and verifiable." The sergeant stopped mid-sentence, eyeing the button and then me. His boredom vanished. Domestic disputes are a nightmare for cops, messy, emotional, no proof. But video changes everything. "You have footage?" he asked. I nodded. "Arrival video. Audio of my mother and sister, plotting before I came up the porch. And 4K recording of Angela clawing her own face minutes before you arrived." He stared, capped his pen, and said, "Keep the button. Unlock your phone." As he walked off, the adrenaline drained. I wasn't afraid of the cell. I knew the truth was coming. What hollowed me out was the last thing I'd seen. Angela screaming lies, blue lights flashing, and Grandpa Joseph standing still on the porch. He had watched me get cuffed, shoved into the cruiser, and hauled away. And he said nothing. He wasn't weak, he was strategic. I realized I was a pawn in whatever game he was playing. When the sergeant returned, he told me my lawyer was here. The captain wanted to watch the footage again. "We made a mistake," he said. "No, it was a crime," I answered. "And I'm pressing charges." Inside the office, my lawyer David looked bored, which meant I was winning. We watched Angela on screen calmly rake her nails across her cheek and whisper, "We'll ruin her career." The room went dead silent. The captain apologized, promised the arrest record would disappear, and announced they were heading back to arrest her. Filing a false felony report is a crime they don't ignore. I insisted on writing back. Not to gloat, just to end it. Angela opened the door, smirking, thinking I'd crawled home in disgrace. Instead, the captain cuffed her. She screamed for Grandpa. He finally spoke. "I let them," he said. He admitted he saw her fake the injury. He could have stopped my arrest but didn't. Because of the morality clause in the family trust. A felony against a family member means total disinheritance. He hadn't sacrificed me. He'd sacrificed her. Angela crumbled, realizing she'd just lost everything. She lived for money, status, power. Grandpa watched her go, merciless and mourning at the same time. Then he handed me the keys to the Lexus. The trust was locked. Angela was finished. I was free. I drove away without looking back. I deleted the family chat. My credit accounts were already removed. I didn't just leave a house that night. I abandoned a bloodline. Sometimes you have to let someone hit rock bottom so you can finally climb out.